Thank you all for joining us today for this author talk, highlighting one of NAFSA's new publications, Engaging International Alumni as Strategic Partners. Today, we will hear directly from the co-authors, Sandra Rincon and Dr. Gretchen Dobson. Thank you both for joining me today to talk about this new book. I know that you're both experts in international alumni relations. I would like to open our conversation by asking you to share a highlight of developing this book for you.
Well, thank you, Del. And thank you for having us here. And before we start, I just want to thank NAFSA. On behalf also of Gretchen, we've talked about this many times of how thankful we are that NAFSA gave us the opportunity to share, our experience, but also of many colleagues that supported and contributed in the book. And also, all the support throughout this whole process. So wonderful. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. I don't know, Gretchen, would you like to start?
Sure. And I just, of course, echo what Sandra has said. I think a highlight, Dale and everyone for working on this book was that it's a book about engaging international alumni, which means engaging some of our key stakeholders around the world. And it was a truly global effort. I'm based in Australia. Sandra has been in the Netherlands and primarily Spain over the course of developing the book. The editorial team is based in the DC region in the area, and our contributors are from all over the world. So we've touched upon almost every continent through every time zone. And we've done it during a time that's been the most challenging time of our lives, and we're able to do it in a year. And I think the highlight for me is that one of the highlights, many highlights, is that that kind of global collaborative effort was really, I think, one of our objectives from the start, and we got it done. But we got it done with everyone's I think, contributing their passion and their time. And we know it wasn't easy because so many people had to shift their jobs and responsibilities and take on extra work and work different types of hours and manage children and life at home while working at home. So I think the highlight was just that we've been able to accomplish this during a challenging time. Sandra?
Thank you, Gretchen. Yes, indeed, it was a very challenging time. Personally, for me, the process has been very empowering. Last year, when we started discussing the outline and the how we would go about writing the book with Gretchen and Dara, I had just been operated from a malignant tumor, and the mental stress that comes from being a cancer survivor, and on the top of that, the pandemic was very scary times, and the book was just magical for me in the sense that it gave me the opportunity to focus on something constructive, something positive, and something, for the future. And that was a lifesaver. And for me, that's been very meaningful. So thank you for that.
And thank you both. I know it was challenging for many people in the field, both personally and professionally. So really thank you both for sticking with it and making this book so special for all of us and sharing your insights with us. I'm wondering if there's a case study or an insight, something special that you learned throughout the process of writing the book that you'd like to share with us.
Sandra, would you like to take this one first?
Sounds good. Thanks, Gretchen. Well, there's a lot of creativity going on in our field and in international higher ed. And we discover many things, especially, I think that the pandemic also forced a lot of creativity. And so that was wonderful. But what stands out for me the most is that chapter on transformational philanthropy from Maria Gallo and Kevin Flynn. Well, they're two people who have actually done their PhDs on alumni relations and, you know, have a wealth of experience and knowledge. And we had asked them for a case study. And when we first got the draft, you know, Gretchen and I looked at each other because you know, I was perfect for a book, you know. So we actually said to them, well, maybe you should write a book on this. And I hope they do. So the chapter is just, so it became a chapter instead of a case study. It became a full-fledged chapter, and there's just a wealth of information, but also lots of case studies that, you know, make the point very valuable of, you know, alumni can go beyond, you know, the fundraising part, but also in terms of what philanthropy being much more expanded than not just only the donation of money, but the donation of time and knowledge and so much more that alumni can offer. So definitely that for me was a highlight. Yeah. Gretchen?
Yeah, I think there's so many great examples. One of them, though, is just, I wanted to just point out for those that are with us today, is to think about an example that brought International Recruitment and Partnerships Office together with the Alumni Relations Office. Is kind of a classic example that Sandra and I have been writing about and helping develop strategies around for over a decade. And in this example from Wilfrid Laurier University, or what they call Laurier, our friends in Canada, this is where we talk about, in a case study that was co-written by two colleagues that work closely together, and it takes the place of over 4 years. And they start off by talking about that the International Recruitment and Partnerships Office knew that there was advantages in, I think, tapping the passion of Laurier grads who are very passionate about their experience, and to bring them in as key partners in helping recruit internationally. And the Alumni Relations Office started to invest in an International Alumni Relations Officer. And what they had to do was that they had to, I think, manage their expectations together, and to do it in kind of bite-sized pieces in the first couple of years, achieve their objectives and more, engage their alumni and more, engage their families, their communities around the world. Pretty soon the agendas were set by the alumni themselves, who were talking about what they wanted to do as global ambassadors and more committed volunteers, and spending more time on helping. But over the course of 4 years, they've been able to move it from an idea to reality, to now what they are looking to do aspirationally and around the challenges that they face this year. So really, they've started small, and you've been able to see a model that's grown, again, collaborative efforts in kind of a way that I think everyone could learn something from that case example, whether it be a new best practice or a way of really, I think, explaining what the value proposition is to your office and working with another office. So.
Great, thank you both for sharing that. And you've alluded to this, the fact that this book was written in less than a year. There are many global voices included in this book. Though we had an initial concept, we were able to help develop and evolve that concept as writing and pieces came in. Tell us more about the writing process over the last year, and what tips you may have for anyone who's thinking about making that transition from an idea to actually writing a book.
I'll take that one. Okay. I think one of the things that we did early on was decide who was going to lead in particular areas, just because we had already developed some material and not I mean, this is all original, but that we developed some ideas that we're working towards, whether it was research under Sandra's area, ideas that had developed maybe for an article, but that we thought, I think, when we look at this area, or we're setting the first chapter that Sandra led, we're talking about ambassadors, which a small piece that I led. We're looking at different sections of divvying up best practices towards the end, and where our contacts were, the immediate contacts that we had known, professionally, or we had known of. it started to, we kind of scaffolded kind of our, you know, our outline, and it soon became obvious that, you know, we could lead in these areas. She can play primary, I can play secondary. I may start something and she can look at it. But so we worked really well because we knew that, you know, we were both committed to the timeline. We were committed to, but we're also committed to, you know, being human and recognizing that we had to ask for extensions. And then once we got those extensions, we had to make good on that extra time. One of the first things that, if you have an idea for a book, is to think about whether there's someone else out there in the you know, professional network who may have been writing about that same idea, but, you know, doing some research around that to make sure that your idea is going to be original, or if there is other work that's similar, what will make your idea stand out? Maybe it's taking the ending from a previous book or an article and expanding that. Spending some time on the research end, I think, would be really, really important. And then spending some time, you know, thinking about the you know, kind of outlining it. And, you know, if you're at the stage where you have an approved abstract, you have an approved outline, and you're looking to, you know, write this book, think about whether the book may be stronger with a co-author. Think about whether it's something that could be in an edited version. You'd be bringing in lots and lots and lots of different voices. And, you know, what is the overall objective of the book? You have to think about your audience. You have to think about what is the story you're trying to tell. And I'd have to say, carve out time in your schedule, because it becomes like a major client in your life or a major project. Or if you supervise 3 people right now in your office, you might be supervising 4. That book is going to be the FTE that you'd be spending time with. It's just going to take time, and it's probably going to take more time than you would expect. But it's very satisfying. Sandra, what did I miss?
Well, yeah, I agree that the discipline, definitely, you know, you have to block the time to do that project. But I mean, people have a lot of experience, but people who have a lot of experience on the field, you know, just start writing. And I think what helped me a lot was also the fact that I've been working, you know, on and off on a research project, and, you know, I've been writing here and there some of these ideas, and I was able to consolidate a lot and put it in the book. So that was very helpful. So what, you know, my advice for somebody who wants to start writing is, you know, don't start with a big chunk and think, oh my God, a book, this is huge. Maybe, you know, start with articles or an article, and pair up with people that, you know, what Gretchen says, either they're in the same field or that you feel comfortable, especially that you feel comfortable working with. It becomes, you know, a close relationship in terms of, you know, sharing your ideas, and it's a trust relationship, right? Of co-writing something with a colleague. So definitely, and there is so much, like I said, there's so much creativity going on in our fields that it's meaningful for people just to start, you know, writing articles and sharing what they're doing. If it, you know, applied, and then later on they can go on and look a bit more in terms of what Gretchen said, the research or, you know, the methodology. But first start putting out there some of the experiences that you to share. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
I agree. I think some of the strengths of this book are that you have a little bit of a lot, right? So you have many things represented. You have a framework, you have voices from very many different countries and different continents. They've all taken different approaches to international alumni relations and engagement, depending on what works best for their campus community and their alumni community. What do you hope readers take away from this book? We can start with Gretchen.
Well, I hope readers take away a couple of points. One is that that engaging international alumni strategic partners, just to name our title one more time, is not just the responsibility of an alumni relations office or an advancement area or one person's job because they hold a title that has alumni in it. And this is something we've been saying for years, it is a shared opportunity. It is one that is shared by alumni who will be engaging other alumni as leaders. It's shared by alumni who will be engaging future alumni as engaging their students. It's stakeholder relations. It's building community, and it's building that I think readers want to that they take away that they can see themselves somewhere within some page of some case study that they could relate to that, even if it's their own experience, as whether they're a disengaged alum themselves or they know of someone in their family, their friends circle that has been involved, that they could see themselves and they can say that this is, yes, there are things here that are applicable and possible, and that we should be thinking creatively, as Sandra's mentioned, and we should be thinking about the roles of universities that are much more than teaching and research, as Sandra's been writing quite a bit with in the themes around social responsibility. The second point is that engagement and building affinity with alumni some of these best practices can also be transferred to the business world. If you want to engage your former employees, or you want to engage members, if you're working from a nonprofit or an NGO, or you're working with a scholarships program and you have former awardees that are in other places of the world. The idea is that the ideas and the studies around affinity, around growing volunteers and building ambassador programs, and how philanthropy is used, to advance internationalization. I guess what I'm saying is that there's best practices that I think can be replicated in other industries, and so I'm hoping that some of the bookstore sales will be coming from other areas outside of higher education because of some of the things I think that our contributors have been able to share.
From my perspective, I think that one of the takeaways, right, is a lot of, some of the contributors are work in the same intersection of internationalization and international alumni relations. And they've been sharing that, the book has actually sort of put, the arguments and the methodology and the results sort of in one place and together. So that has been tremendously helpful. So, I hope that was our intention. It was, not only to make an argument of how important it is to strategically engage international alumni, but in particular for, to advance internationalization. That was, what we wanted to make a difference there in terms of how engaging international alumni from the perspective of those who work in the international office or in other departments of the university, and not per se the alumni office. How can, why is it meaningful to have that engagement there? So, I hope that comes out clearly, and that was our purpose in the book, and that's why we presented also many case studies from different parts of the world. So, to speak of that internationalization as well.
I agree. I think this book has many different potential stakeholders that can learn from the material that's provided, from leadership to administrators, staff, scholars, researchers, even policymakers. I think could learn and draw from the various case studies and frameworks and other chapters that are included in this book. Why should they make this book a part of their library?
Precisely for that. I mean, I think that now we're in the time of where collaboration is the key word. I mean, we have seen it with the pandemic. We wouldn't have been able, I mean, scientists would not have been able to come up with, a vaccine as quickly as they did if they hadn't been all this collaboration, right? So, but that's extended throughout all the sectors. Collaboration has become sort of the word, and so working with international alumni is, they're your loyal allies and for universities, and universities, whether we like it or not, need to internationalize because we need to prepare. We live in a global world, and I mean the pandemic has really pushed that forward, exponentially, right? So we need to collaborate. We need to find allies in different parts of the world, and alumni, are the perfect allies for that. They know your institution, they trust the institution, they have an emotional engagement to them. Their experience at the university was probably transformational because they lived abroad, and that in itself, it's already meaningful and different. So it made them, rethink or re-question their cultural background and be faced with that otherness. So I think that it can enrich different fields. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, 2 reasons I think people should buy it, because we talk about engaging international alumni pre-COVID. We talk about the challenges in the last 18 months, and we're able to write about that and address those challenges and think about the ways that, engaging international alumni also is a segue to advancing some of these larger global objectives like SDGs and things like that. So, and we do believe it has a long shelf life. Second reason is just that it has a very pretty cover, and you're going to want that on your bookshelf. So it's very colorful, and it should brighten up any office.
It is very eye-catching. I would like to save enough time for us to have a conversation with our audience today, so I will transition to live questions with our audience. Thank you both for taking the time to talk to me, and let's see what other questions people have for us. Hello, Gretchen and Sandra. I've been watching the chat, and it seems that we have a good audience with us today, and they have submitted several questions, so I will start with some of those. The first question that was submitted is, if we want to start alumni outreach but don't currently have that in place, what is the best place to start? And maybe Gretchen, we'll start with you with that one.
Thank you. And by the way, remember the pretty cover I was just talking about? Here it is. It is bright. It is a happy cover. Okay, so I think that a simple way of looking at this, there's lots of answers to this question, but is to think about engaged international students, okay? So we want to engage our international students. They are our alumni. All programs are alumni programs because it's all about building that lifelong relationship. So by working closely with international student services, working with their offices, thinking about any of the faculties that may have been attracting more international students, and just asking around, who are the engaged international students? It might be that they are part of the international student organizations, and having a conversation with them about building out an international alumni program. Many of them would have been referred to the institution from a colleague, a friend, a relative. How did they get there? What was that story? And then they can maybe invite that alum to come back and join them in building a new program. So you want to engage them, and you want to, that's a big theme of ours anyway throughout the book, but that was just one answer. Sandra?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Gretchen. We believe that the alumni cycle is actually the student alumni cycle, right? It's a journey that starts when the student actually starts looking for a program. So, do they find on the website testimonials of alumni? Do they find a network of alumni that can support them? That kind of thing. But in terms of, I also go back a lot to think about why you want to why you want to involve alumni, why you want to engage them. Really think about that. Take the time to reflect. I've started many programs from scratch, and I've taken the time to do some research in terms of get to know the university really well, get to know your internal partners, get to know why they would want to have an engagement with alumni, and try to match the needs of the institution with the needs of the alumni and the interest of both. To get started. So think about serving a group of alumni and students, but definitely think really hard on why and define that very clearly. That's where I would start. Thank you. Thank you for that question.
There's actually a related question which might allow both of you to expand a little bit on some of the comments you just made about strategies to advocate for working on alumni engagement with VIPs or higher level administration. Oftentimes for many people, this is treated as something that's on top of other responsibilities or done on the side, but any advice for working with VIPs, getting this incorporated more into a strategic plan or an internationalization plan that you would have to offer?
My thought on that was going back to my own experience more than 10 years ago when I started to work at Tufts University in Boston, was that our president and our provost and our deans were, and some of our trustees were going to become our biggest volunteers. Now we had the support of the president and the provost and the deans to do just that because we were also in the middle of a campaign. We're just launching a campaign. But what we also did was encourage our schools, because we wanted to knit this whole global engagement program together. We wanted to make sure it was comprehensive and all parties were able to participate, which meant the schools. It wasn't just going to be a centralized effort, it was very comprehensive. And each of the deans identified faculty with academic or research interests that were international research interests, faculty that had international affiliations with other organizations, that had led study programs abroad, that were affiliated with the Fletcher School. The idea was that they in themselves were globalists and that they wanted to share their network with the university, that they could think about this as being engagement that will benefit them and their schools, provide some exposure for these faculty, for these research interests, for, it'd be good for marketing. So all of that meant was that we were going to tick a lot of boxes in terms of what was going to be in it for them, in terms of a school, a department, and then advancement overall would be identifying and building more relationships with current and future donors, as well as just students and families and overall stakeholders. So as Sandra said, we went back to the why. And we knew we wanted to build our campaign, which was primarily about providing more financial aid on a need blind basis to all students. And then we kind of worked back, that was a big why. And then how are we going to get there? And then we had to plan that. And we did it fairly methodically. But these VIPs, as you call them, were like our biggest volunteers. And we made sure that they were, it was a consultative kind of approach with them and their teams. So we just didn't do it alone, put it that way. It was never just the alumni relations office's responsibility for deciding how it went, when it went, and how we went about that. So, and we always looked back at involving those higher level administrators in all forms of assessment and feedback.
Great. Sandra, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, to complement a bit in terms of, what happens if you have a top management that, hasn't really thought about engaging alumni, and it's not really supportive, or, they have not considered it yet as being part of the strategy. Then you need to do your homework and start interviewing people on campus and trying to find partners, and trying to really get to understand their position, their interests, their needs, and to try to really create a case for support. We elaborated that here in the book as well, but it's really, really important. Because it's not always that you have a president or a provost or a rector that is supportive of alumni relations, and so they need encouragement. They need to clarify, and that's why it's so important to get that why clear, and that why needs to be connected to the university's mission and vision, right, and values. So there is a lot of homework to be done before you even actually start engaging alumni. And so I recommend that you do take the time to do that homework and that hard work of getting to know your colleagues, your partners, the people that are going to benefit a lot from a program such as this. If it's for to help you advance internationalization, then of course would be those who are working with internationalization that you would want to interview, when you would want to hear from them, what's in it for them, and get those clear first of all. Yeah.
So along these lines, there's some other questions here that I will pose together. One is about having multiple stakeholders, which you've both alluded to, the importance of having multiple stakeholders across campus involved in this work. The division of labor, how does this labor get divided? How do you make sure everybody's on the same page and sharing information? So if you could touch on best practices for kind of bringing people together, but also managing the multiple stakeholders that need to be involved in this work.
Again, no, I'll take that. I'll start with that. I mean, what I said, the start of a program really takes a lot of work in terms of getting to know those internal partners, and that part is really, really important, because in alumni relations we tend to be very external because we need to engage our alumni, so a lot of our energy and attention goes there, and we at times neglect to do the case for support and the engagement internally that is actually going to be supporting that program. So you create a lot of meetings, and try to get a lot of consensus. At times it's good to bring a consultant in who can help bring in the different partners, and have a strategy day, or have people to get them to think about common goals. We all have an institution that we represent. This institution is going in a particular direction, and all the departments are helping that the institution to go in different directions, in that direction, from different points, right? So we all have a common goal, and getting to think about what is that common goal, and how can we support that, and how can we share? Because actually the alumni work, what we said before, it needs to start with the engagement of students, and that means it means engaging a lot of different departments across campus. So it's not the work only of the alumni office or the international office or the student services or the career office, but actually it's a combination of, you know, all of them. Communications, marketing, all of them working together. So getting them all sort of on the same, and you know, having a sort of workshop to look at the different parts that you know, are in that journey, that student journey, and later on in the alumni journey, and you know, who can tap into the different parts and who can collaborate to help through that journey and get a message that is, you know, that is consistent and coherent. That's really important and meaningful. But it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It's not, you know, it's not like, well, we get that going. A lot of times what I did when I started from scratch is just start small and start building, you know, really from a small program. And then, you know, you extend your internal stakeholders and your external stakeholders. That, you know, that worked for me. Gretchen?
Just one thing I wanted to add to what Sandra mentioned is just another piece of it would be who's telling the story about your institution. And that would be primarily enrollment management or marketing, recruitment. They're telling the story externally to prospective future students and families. And so how are we, what does internationalization look like at our institution? And how does that play out in the relationships with our students and with our alumni and with the mission, and what is, you know, how are we delivering on internationalization as part of our mission? So again, having those kind of conversations with communications and marketing and enrollment management, they're key to all that as well. So just another piece of another big partner, and they do plan. You know, they look out, they plan out. But as Sandra mentioned, starting small, absolutely. Where have been some of the key markets internationally in the past? Where are they today? What has COVID meant for us in terms of online engagement, online learning? How many more are we reaching? These are probably conversations you're having to.
So along those lines, one question here is about the development of an International Alumni Advisory Board. So I'd like to know if either of you have any experience working with or developing an International Alumni Advisory Board, if you would recommend one as an effective approach or strategy. And if somebody wanted to initiate such an alumni board, some recommendations on where to start.
Oh, Gretchen,
Sandra, do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So first of all, again, I think boards, advisory boards, committees, councils, if first of all, what is the purpose? To clarify the purpose. If one person wants it or two alums want it, and you're kind of thinking, well, should we say yes to everything? Because it's really, we'd love to do it. You know, this has been a goal for a long time. The answer is clarifying the why behind that, and then thinking about whether it's an ad hoc board or ad hoc advisory board with kind of a 9-month or a 1-year window, just to provide some feedback and support. Think about where, what will the membership look like? Does it represent the breadth of your international engagement? Does it look like your current or future students? Will their background supply you with kind of that tacit knowledge that you need about best engagement practices online, virtually, in person for those markets, for those countries? Is that going to be helpful for you? So just understanding kind of the formation, the why, the formation. Starting small is a good place as well. Be respectful and think about where you're engaging them. Where are they around the world? What time will you be meeting? There's a lot of logistics that go to that. Here we are, spanning many continents right here, this afternoon, tonight, this morning, wherever we are. Think about the logistics around that. And is there a senior administrator who will also participate maybe in an ex officio kind of way, a dean, a director, even asking the support from president or vice chancellor to step in to say, thank you for joining, thank you for volunteering, recognizing that this is an important topic to the institution, and to be able to invite them and to say, yes, thank you, and to do that early so that they know that it's important and they have the ear of the institution. So providing incentives along the way, of course, to stay involved. But those are just immediate thoughts. The worst thing is to pull people together and then not have an agenda that's really that's an active agenda, or that maybe has too many things and you're not organized. So yeah, very cautiously optimistic about all these types of boards, but we just need to, and then I think then identifying one or two key volunteers who can be the organizers of that. So it's peer-led.
Great. Sandra, do you have any thoughts on alumni advisory boards?
Yeah, well, actually, in the book, we do have the case study of the KU Leuven in Belgium, and they have like a 3-tier chapters, and they clearly define, who composes that advisory board for each of the chapters abroad, and it's I thought it was really good in terms of it provides a lot of flexibility as well in terms of, they can have chapters where is, very structured, and other chapters where it's not, but still the alumni office is able to support to a certain extent each of the boards. So, I would advise you to just take a look at that. If not, definitely check out the Catholic, the KU Leuven. Brown University in the U.S. also has a wonderful, also included in the book. They've provided a lot of support to their chapters, and they've developed, online manuals and lots of stuff out there. So a lot of universities have developed these manuals, and they are available a lot of the time online. So you can just, check out some of that and get some support and ideas from there. But there is no, right or wrong way to do it. It's going back to that why. Why do you want an advisory board? What would you expect that to be? The result of having them involved in such a way, but be very clear as to what their roles will be and what their commitment is. So I would, definitely go into check out what other universities are doing. There's a lot of material that universities just post on their websites, and that you can, check out and see what they're doing. And again, like I said, in the book, we have a lot of also references that can be helpful.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's the concept of having the centralized alumni board, that's working directly with the institution, and then there's the idea of having multiple boards or chapter leadership in different regions. So there's different ways that institutions can approach the development of alumni boards. There's another question about outreach and better reaching alumni. So I'd like to just get your impressions on the role of social media in outreach and alumni engagement, and any mechanisms that you may recommend for the outreach to alumni, how to identify them if they haven't been identified, or how to keep them engaged once you know where they are.
Sandra, you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I'm unmuting myself. One of the big challenges with international alumni is that when they leave the university, they don't necessarily leave you their home address, their home address or their emails, or so that in itself is difficult. So universities usually run campaigns, or alumni relations offices run campaigns, through social media, where they've already have some sort of website where they can register in this way, sort of capture that data that they need, and then to start the engagement process, or at least to update their database. So that's kind of a start. And in my own experience, that's, that was one of the ways we did it, and it worked. In terms of using, the Facebook, the LinkedIn, depending on the country, you need to find out, what they're using in the countries where you want to develop or engage them from. So that's useful. Your students, your international students, can be a tremendous help with that as well. They will let you know what is being used, what they're using. And I always went to where they went, where they are active, rather than trying to set up my own different programs. If you're being strategical about where you're setting up your chapters, depending, the countries, then have your international students from that country help you out also in terms of building that campaign. That's very helpful. Now there's also all kinds of alumni platforms that are being developed. When I started back in 2009, there weren't any really savvy things where alumni could engage with each other, and that's really relevant. There's the Facebook and there's the LinkedIn, but if the university is going to own their own platform, I advise that it be something where alumni can also meet and engage with each other, because that's the benefit for them. That's what they really want. And of course, from the perspective of the institution, we want to be able to have the data, have it updated, and get to know them and see, where they are, what type of jobs they have, what they're doing, and how they're engaging others through social media. But definitely, social media is one of the tools. Yeah, thank you, Gretchen. You want to do that?
Just a personal story. It's my 30th reunion at Boston College undergraduate. So with my 30th reunion this year at Boston College, it was a virtual reunion at this point. But many of us wrote in pictures, tell our story, where are we in the world. And they've done a really great job of staying, class of 1991, staying connected. And every week there's a post with 5 or 6 names saying, hey, we've just been able, find out where you are. And there's a map of the world, and there's pictures and connection. Another classmate of mine's in Sydney. I'm like, oh, she's just 4.5 hours away. I never knew she was in Sydney. The ideas are that, it's homegrown. It's probably, I don't even know if I think BC is working with a third party to provide this, but these are traditional kind of annual events or big events or traditional events. And when you're going to engage large groups of people, can you do that by way of making sure that, the kind of the virtual connections provide a sense of place, where are you, what are you doing, all that. But it's just been really nice to see it. And I think it's it's probably been one of the best engagement tools over the course of 30 years. So thanks
Social
to
media
and what we could do.
Right. Social media is so powerful right now. And as Sandra and Gretchen both alluded to, knowing your audience and meeting them where they're at is really important, rather than trying to create your own social media tools or your own platforms and getting people to use that. It often allows you to identify new people. So I think that it can be a really good outreach strategy and platform. On the flip side, once you've identified these people and you've collected some information, maintaining that data and sharing that data can be another challenge. Recommendations or thoughts on not only outreach and collection, but maintenance and sharing of that information to the various stakeholders on campus, or even off campus that may need access to it.
It's a good question. And stepping back a bit, I think it's really important to understand what level of what the health and wellness of international data looks like at your institution. Because let's just kind of start there. I mean, is it is it a spreadsheet of a bunch of names that were taken or collected from a survey 10 years ago? Are these old business cards that were collected by maybe international advancement officers who took a trip 2 or 3 years ago to accompany the president or the vice chancellor? You know, how have you, if your CRM and the processes around that have not been as robust as intended, or they were not, there's data in several different places, and the idea is what is, you know, where does that international data lie? It's going to lie in enrollment management or admissions. It's going to lie in advancement. It's going to probably lie in some of the faculties. It's going to lie in the registrar's area. What happens once student records become alumni records? All that, it's an international data management review is a project in itself, and it could take a good year, but it's so worth cleaning house and doing that. And then, as Sandra mentioned, building an online community, or, you know, being able to have a good kind of central repository of information. At least it's the best you can have, you have. And partnering with a third party to build an online community, or to do it yourself in-house, or to use other sources to validate that information and augment it. And again, the CRMs, the online platforms, it'll all be helpful in being able to qualify and update and augment information. And so your information will read to theirs. But without going into technicality, it's really going back to make sure that even old yearbooks, it's a great place for information. So it is a project. You can involve international students on the project. You can also involve alumni that have maybe some extra time on their hand, and they're always asking. It just takes a while, but it's almost as if it's a foundation to building a program. You don't want to overlook that step.
Just to add to Gretchen is, you know, how are you going to share that information internally, right? And that's an internal discussion, and it varies from country to country and from university to university. You know, here in Europe, we have the GDPR, and alumni are not considered anymore part of the student. Therefore, the student administration cannot give us their information anymore without the permission of alumni. So at that time, what we asked is, as the student was graduating, they need to fill out all these forms, you know, was asked them at that point is, you know, would you be kind enough to leave us your email address for the alumni, you know, for the alumni office, and as long as they signed that would be okay. Honestly, you know, you need your legal department to come in and update you on what is possible, what's not possible within your institution and within your country. There's a lot of variety at this point, so I wouldn't want to say, well, this is the way to do it. I just think is you need to go talk to your legal department and you know, find out what law applies in your country and for your institution. I would also think about seriously a CRM system. You know, working with Excel sheets, even if you're talking about 500 people, it's crazy. I just do not advise to even start there. There are alumni platforms, software that has been developed exclusively for alumni and fundraising that, you know, look into that, do your research. They're savvy now, very savvy. They provide a lot of possibilities, a lot of engagement, you know, between alumni, webinars, all kinds of things that you can do. It's worth investing in that rather than having your IT department develop something for because these companies, that's all they do, and they're developing and innovating constantly. Your institution is not going to be able to do that for your alumni project. So I definitely advise that, um, and and definitely look at, okay, so the software, who's going to own that that data? You need to be able to own the data. And this is one of the challenges with LinkedIn and Facebook, is that yes, we start there, we communicate with alumni there, but you cannot rely on Facebook and LinkedIn because you don't own that data. And it happened to me. I thought it was the first place I started, and I had 5,000 alumni there. And then on a January 4th that I opened my Facebook to check my alumni, that page was gone. Facebook at that time, that was a while ago, decided that, hey, that's too many people. Sorry, and they closed it. And that was my whole year of work was gone like that, So, work in parallels. Yes, you need to communicate where they are, but at the same time, you need to make sure that you develop a good foundation. And a good foundation is the university needs to own the data, needs to own a CRM system, needs to own its own alumni platform.
Centralized data management. We could have a whole webinar just on that topic, but it is especially important no matter what type of data you're collecting and then managing to allow multiple stakeholders access to the information they need. I do know that we have a few more questions, but it is also time to start wrapping up. So I just want to invite you both to make brief final comments or recommendations about the book or this project, and we can certainly reach out to people who have participated with other answers as well. So final comments, Gretchen, would you like to start?
So Sandra can have the last word.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Yes, the connection's good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think that the time it could be a better time, I think, to again reinforce the importance of engaging international alumni strategic partners, because we are engaging so many people today about our lives, about our jobs, about our future, about big issues that mean everything to ourselves, our families, our communities, our countries. And it's just, Sandra and I have worked on, we're convening a conversation, an updated conversation to a topic that we've been working with for a long time. And we've convened so many voices from around the world. And we invite you to get into these pages and be part of the conversation and to share it with others, so that, and share it with alumni and share it with international students or any students. It doesn't matter whether we're, they're international, domestic, or online, or I've never met Mission Starter, but it's been wonderful to be able to work on something that I think is going to facilitate many, many, many conversations in the future. I think one of the questions was, is there a moment, is there that key moment when to connect with an international alum and engage their alum? And I think, what's important to them, find that emotional connection. And that emotional connection can just be kind of reminiscing 30 years later about what their institution means to themselves and to the world. So,
Sandra, any brief final concluding comments? Thank you, Gretchen.
Well, thanks everyone for for listening and for asking all the questions. And I support what Gretchen has said in terms of it's important. And for me, I mean, I've been an international student and an immigrant pretty much my whole life since I was 10 years old. So I've lived this this book very much. So, and we try to think about, okay, schools, small schools that are just starting, how would you go about starting something, and how can you support internationalization of the institution, through the alumni, and that's been the purpose of this. And we hope that it's useful and meaningful. And thank you so much. Yeah.
And on behalf of NAFSA, I would just like to thank you both for working with us and helping us to develop this wonderful resource for those people in the field that are focusing on international alumni engagement. All of you who are participating in this author talk today have been given a code, alumni20, to receive a discount off this publication, and we encourage you to use that code when you make your purchase. And I thank you all for joining us. Look forward to talking to you all more on this topic in future events.